Good evening, everybody. Welcome to meeting number 3 of the Administration Finance Fire Committee agenda. I am your chair, Jason Trombetta. Comments can be made from members of the public for the matter that on the agenda by advising the chair during the request to address the items on the agenda section of the agenda. The public may submit written comments for matters that are on the public agenda to nfiorentino@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting. For consideration by the committee. Comments will be received after 4:30 on the day of the committee meeting will be considered at the following council meeting. Comments submitted are included in the record. This meeting will be live streamed and as well recorded and available on the township. Just to let everyone know that we have sitting with us is our acting CAO, Mike DePaula, and Councillor Bell is trying to get online, but as far as I know at this moment, he has not achieved to get online, so we'll wait and see. If not, then we'll have to send his regrets. We have a land acknowledgement statement that the Township of West Lincoln, being part of Niagara Region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendoronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including Mississaugas, sorry, I lost my place there, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in the Niagara Region today. The Township of West Lincoln, as a part of the region municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship and the land in which we live. Members of committee, is there any change in orders of items on the agenda? Seeing none, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest? I see none. So we have one appointment tonight, Mr. Carlo Alvarez of KPMG. We have a presentation of an audit service plan. So, Mr. Alvarez, welcome back. If you can just come up to the microphone. Just introduce yourself for the record and
let me just get started then. My name is Carlos Alvarez, audit partner with KPMG. Nice to see all of you again, and good evening. Last year would have been our first year as your auditors. So we are now entering our year number 2. Year 2 is always a lot smoother than year number 1. So we do expect the audit to be a little bit more accelerated as compared to the timing that we executed the audit on last year. The reason why I'm here today is to present the audit plan. We will present an audit findings report upon the conclusion of the audit in a few months. But what I will do is I will take you through what I would call some of the key decision points that we make as part of setting our audit plan. We prepared a 30-some-odd page document, which is our audit plan. I will not speak to every page in that audit plan, but I'll take you through some of the highlights.
you can sit if you'd like, Mr. Alvarez. You don't have to.
I wouldn't mind standing.
Okay.
It's
just want to
sitting all day.
Other presentations,
Yes.
other committees, people do stand for presentations, but if you're comfortable that way, that's good too.
Great, thank you. On page number 4, just in terms of audit highlights, again, our scope has not changed on a year-over-year basis. We will provide 3 separate audit opinions, including the opinion on the township, as well as the trust and the library. We as auditors, just as a reminder, we do not audit every single transaction. We have this concept called materiality that we use to plan and perform the audit. Materiality has 2 parts to it. It has a quantitative aspect, which is a numerical amount, and then a qualitative lens to it. From a quantitative perspective, we have set the materiality at just over $600,000. Individually, that is a really big number. We as auditors have a much lower tolerance for audit differences, and I'll get that to you in a few slides. From an accounting standpoint, in terms of how your debits and credits come together, in the past few years, there have been no significant changes in any of the accounting rules. This year is a little different. We have 2 new accounting standards. One, I would say, is very significant for all municipalities throughout Canada. This new standard is called Asset Retirement Obligations. If I can just use one simple example, asbestos. In many facilities and buildings that were constructed Specifically in the 1970s, asbestos was commonly used. With this new accounting standard in the current year, you now have to account for the eventual disposal of that asbestos that may be in one of your facilities or one of your buildings, even though that building or facility is still being used. This is a fundamental change that all municipalities are required to adopt. And certainly we will look to management to prepare, call it a white paper, documentation, just in terms of how did management adopt this new standard, and then certainly as auditors, we will be in a position to review their work. We do not anticipate that it has a huge impact on municipalities that tend to be newer in terms of newer buildings, newer facilities, but for many municipalities across Canada that have, large industrial complexes, it is a very significant impact. So that is just what I would say the biggest change on a year-over-year basis. On the bottom right-hand section of page 4, just 2 items that we are always required to consider. This is the risk of management override and the risk of fraud. Fraud happens. We do design certain procedures as part of the audit to respond to these 2 risks. And absolutely, if there's anything that we detect, whether it's management override of controls or on the topic of fraud, we will certainly be bringing that forward to you for discussion when we present the audit findings report. Moving along in the report, just a few pages into page number 7, just going back to my comments about materiality. If there's one number to remember in this presentation, is the number $30,000. That is our tolerance for audit differences. So whether management makes corrections to the adjustments or not, anything that we detect that is equal to $30,000 or higher, we will be bringing those forward to you for discussion. I often get questions from council members about why would I need to know the adjustments that management has corrected. The reason being is that if we come to you with 10, 15, 20 adjustments, that would raise certain questions about, does the management team have the resources and do they have the capabilities and the competencies to produce a package ready for audit? So that's why we would bring both of those forward for discussion. Okay. And there is science that goes behind how we determine these numbers, and certainly I can confirm to all of you that these numbers are all within the well-known benchmarks that are used in the industry. So just on page 8, there's a lot of text on page 8, but again, the more significant highlight is that asset retirement obligation standard change, which I've already spoken to. There is another section that changed called financial instruments, but I do not anticipate it having any impact on the township. Moving along to page number 10, just from a risk standpoint, some of the risks that are listed here on page number 10, you would have seen in the prior year. The new addition, again, back to that asset retirement obligation, which we consider to be elevated from a risk standpoint. We do categorize risks into 3 buckets: base, elevated, or significant. And so you can see what we've allocated for some of those financial statement captions.
Mr. Alvarez, did you want your presentation, because it's not getting caught on the recorded taping because it hasn't been moving, so I don't know if you wanted that.
Oh, you want me to hit the button?
As you go to.
Okay. So you can see here on page number 10, just as I mentioned, the different risk items for each of the captions. And you can see the 2 that are new, the asset retirement obligation standard and the financial instruments. But all of the others would be consistent on a year-over-year basis. Again, I've already spoken to management override of controls. And then the second risk, which is the fraudulent revenue recognition. One of the tests that we do in our audit file is that we take a sample of your journal entries, specifically ones that we consider to be unusual. A credit to revenue and a debit to something other than AR. Or sometimes we use criteria such as, management records an entry on a Sunday night at 10 p.m. Different criteria that we use. We look at these journal entries and we ensure that they make sense with a municipal oriented operation. Skipping ahead, just in terms of the overall timing of the audit, again, we do anticipate it being a little smoother and more accelerated. The bulk of the work will occur in the month of May, and then followed with the final reporting to you in the month of June. Okay. Independence, always important for your auditors to discuss independence. I can confirm with all of you here today that we have not provided any tax, advisory, or other services that would threaten our independence. So again, from a scope perspective, all of the services that we've been engaged to provide in the current year are identical to the prior year. There are a lot of appendices that are included. Again, I wasn't planning on going through each one in any detail. I do like to highlight what is not included here. Cybersecurity. Obviously, if you look at other towns, municipalities across the province and across Canada, the number of incidents has certainly been increasing, both in number and in severity. Just as a reminder, what I tell my clients are, you can never eliminate the risk associated with cybersecurity, but you need to continue to evolve how you defend against it. So it's not about getting the risk down to zero, but it's about getting it down to an acceptably low level. We are happy to share our insights with you in terms of, what is the life of a cyber incident. If you've never seen one from cradle to grave, happy to walk in and map that out for you. Separate from the financial statement audit, but certainly if that's an area that interests you, happy to share our thoughts. If I had this meeting with you 3 weeks ago in the month of March, I would have commented on fraud. Also, we are seeing an uptick in the amount of fraud occurring, whether it's checks being intercepted in the mail, phishing scams, or the like. But again, I'm happy to share those insights later in the year if you wish. The only other item would be in terms of this is the brain page. Certainly as you discharge your responsibilities as a member of the committee, these are just some areas in which you can learn about, top 5 questions to ask as a member of the audit committee, what you should be asking of management, what you should be asking of your auditors. So certainly these tools are all available to you. If you do have troubles with any of these links, just let us know and we can get you a more direct route from point A to point B. So with that, I will pause, but that would cover what I would consider to be the more significant aspects of an audit plan.
Great. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Alvarez. I'll turn it over to members of the committee. Any questions for Mr. Alvarez on his presentation? Anything to my right? Anything to my left? Okay. There's nothing from committee, but I'd like to say thank you once again for coming out and your presentation, Mr. Alvarez.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We need there is a motion here. 1 second. Okay, 1 second here. Is there one later in the agenda? Okay. So, as referred to my clerk here that we should be getting a motion to receive the presentation. So we need a mover for the motion. Councillor Chichuk, seconded by Mayor Ganand. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor of receiving the... Well, it's going to come in there, yeah. Are you going to pop it up there? She's going to pop it up, yeah. And then it's in front of you, councillors. Do you have a Councillor Rayner?
I do not, sir.
In favor?
I do now, sir.
Okay. Welcome back. Anybody?
There's some Canadian Tire parts in mine, sir.
And that carries. Thank you, members of committee. Moving on to consent agenda items. Item A 13-24, consent agenda items. Recommendation that Administration, Fire, and Finance Committee hereby approves the following consent agenda items. Items 1, 2, 3B are hereby received for information. 1, Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, minutes of March 6, 2024. 2, West Lincoln Age Friendly Advisory Committee, minutes of March 8, 2024. And Information Report, WLFD 05, 2024, monthly update, March 2024. Anybody want to pull any of the items? Councillor Chichuk?
3.
Would like to pull number 3. Anybody else want to pull anything else? So we'll vote on number 1 and number 2, members of committees. Need a mover for
Going on the first two.
1 and 2, yes. Councillor Riley, Councillor Chichuk. Yep.
Seems so serious.
Who, me?
Yeah.
No.
No, just me. At the previous spot.
Oh, good.
In the groove.
Just going through the agenda like you usually do. Thank you. It's in front of you, councillors. And that carries for number 1 and number 2. Councillor Chichuk pulled number 3. I need a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I need a seconder for that. It's Mayor Ganan. And now, sorry, Councillor, it's to you.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you for this, and I thank the Deputy Chief for being here. So, I guess there's 2 things. One is the progress on Station 2, which is constantly being a bugaboo for us. It seems that we keep saying that there's 2 days of this and 1 day of that and 1 day of this. Substantial completion has not been reached, I take it, and we haven't signed off from the contractors. We have yet, and we have yet to gotten to a place where we would have ever been able to have considered putting the top asphalt on, because you're still doing things. So where are we as far as this station? I understand that the part completion, but I don't know if that means we're a month away or a week away, and I asked the same question last month. I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question. I'll come back with another one. I have one other.
Yep. Go ahead, Mr. Acting.
Through you, Chair Timbretta, to Councillor Chichuk. Thanks for your question. I can give you an update on the status of Station 2 as we're at right now. Progress is being made. I'm happy to say that some of the barriers that were stopping us from moving forward have been knocked over. We have gas in the building. The heat is on. The flooring upstairs is done, so we are making substantial moves now. The fire alarm system has been completed. The HVAC control systems that were really giving us a lot of grief are operational now. So we're really heading into the stage of the project where some of the smaller things are being mopped up. And as far as the date is concerned, to be honest, I'm a little shy to provide any because every one of them has fallen so far. So we're closer now than we've ever been, and we've made more progress in the past, I would say probably 10 weeks than we have in the past 6 months. So I'm very encouraged with the way things are now. If anybody were to have been by the station, they will have seen that the bullards are up, the generator is operational.
The lights are on.
The lights are on. Yeah, the concrete pad out front of the bays has been finished. So we're actually getting pretty close now. I think the chief put in here that he was hoping that the date would be the end of this month. I hope that that is also accurate. We do not have substantial completion yet, and I understand that with substantial completion also means that we relinquish some of the holdback. So we are eager to make sure that all of our concerns are addressed before we do take that step of substantial completion. So we are encouraged with where we are now compared to, let's say, January for sure, because there have been some really, really substantial improvements on the situation for sure. Yeah.
I worry. We were supposed to be, I mean, every week for the past 2 years, we've been talking about being in there, and the cost kept going up and up. So I am glad to hear that. At our last meeting, I think the chief mentioned we would be moving equipment in. Are there trucks in that station right now?
Through you, Chair Trombetta, to Councillor Chichok, no, there are not trucks there yet. We won't be able to move any of our equipment, the way I understand it, until we have substantial completion. So I have spoken with the firefighters at Station 2 to ensure that they are prepared to start packing up their materials and start making the move, but we don't have a date where that exactly is going to happen.
That's one, thank you. That's as good as we can have, and thank you so much for providing us that information. When are we ever going to get, through you, Mr. Chair, back to understanding what events occurred that fire responded to? This report doesn't give us the list of events. They were disappearing they disappeared because of something, but, and the real worry I have about that is for our needs, but also I know that people who experience an event, regardless of whether it's a health or a fire event or an accident, whatever, look for information to give to their insurance company. They'll have to get the information, and that's been very difficult, according to a couple of people who had called me in the past month. So how do they get that information? They have to know specifically where it happened, and they may not know that it wasn't right in front of their house. It was down on another piece of property or something. But so we've lost something for the community and for information of council. So when will that be returning?
Through you, Chair Trombetta, to Councillor Chichok. There's a couple of things going on there. In the first place, with regards to any questions about locations of calls or things of that nature, the way that typically things are done that way with insurance companies is, excuse me, it's incumbent on the insurance company to reach out to the municipality, and they will request a report of the event that happened. So there's a fee for that service. We provide that service and then provide that information to the insurance company directly. So generally, there is not a situation where a citizen would directly access those pieces of information.
That was the problem, sorry. Is the
Right.
citizen was saying there's a lag time with their insurance getting the information, so it's not the individual. I apologize.
I can't really speak to any length of time as far as how long it would take for that to happen. Generally, it would be up to the insurance company to reach out to us via phone, email, mail, and then we provide them with that once payment has been received. So as far as the turnaround time goes, that may be an internal process to the insurance company, but I'm not sure. We certainly do still have access to call data internally within the department. We do not get an aggregated report from dispatch as we used to. And the reason for that, as I understand it, is that our dispatch provider, St. Catharines, recently upgraded their computer-aided dispatch terminals to comply with NextGen 911, which is a project that's ongoing throughout the province, I believe actually the country. And because of that, the luxury that we were sort of receiving in the form of these reports on a regular basis was lost in this new transition. So as far as your request as to when that's going to change, I don't have an answer to that. There have been a substantial number of changes at dispatch since November, which is when this change occurred. We have not been receiving those summary reports from dispatch, so it's difficult to provide them when we haven't received them from our dispatch. They come in an aggregated form, and we're able to provide that to council, which we do prefer to do, of course, to keep you informed, but unfortunately, we don't have that aggregated data in any form right now. So I have been under the understanding that the intent is with dispatch to be providing us with those summaries in the future, but I understand that that setup has not been completed yet.
Mr. Chair, through you, perhaps we could ask that the fire chief and/or staff inquire to find out where and when St. Catharines will be providing that from Central Dispatch, the aggregated summary for use by the individual councils. I can't believe that in the loss that we would lose it forever, that it must be the transitional issue, but that kind of information is very useful to a lot of people. And since they're providing that service, I would imagine that the new system would eventually be able to provide it, because we weren't told that we would lose something as important as that. So if we could just have a report back for in our report, just when would they project, I won't ask for a deadline, but project to have that information back to the individual councils.
So we'll just note it with the three, well,
If the clerk can just note it in
Note
the
it.
files, and I think that, yes, Deputy
for a
Hobson
verbal,
can...
for a verbal next
right.
administration meeting, Counselor?
Yeah, it can be included in the report.
At next administration?
At next administration.
Okay, is that what you're looking for? Okay, is that okay, Madam Clerk? Okay. I have the mayor next, and then nobody else on the side. Okay, have the mayor next.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I wasn't going to pull this item for this reason, but since the conversation has gone that way, when the chief was here last meeting and this conversation came up about the data that's missing, I actually did ask him if he would put into this month's report, not specifics about, where it was, but to give us a sense of what's going on. And we've had this conversation before. You know that I've been kind of monitoring what's happening with, on behalf of looking at mental health, looking at the number of calls that are responding to VSAs, to medical assists, to overdose, to those kinds of things. So even if we had a sense of the last period of time about, the number of fires, the number of MVAs, the number of, I think we'd have a better idea about where our fire dollars are going. And my connection to the better sense of what's happening out here in terms of dealing with mental health issues. So if there's a way that you're going to sort of amend the reporting process anyway, that we can somehow get at a pretty high, simple level, just the numbers or the trends is sort of what I've been watching. So that would be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any further questions from committee? Thank you, Deputy Fire Chief. Appreciate those answers. So we're going to vote on this last consent agenda item. And that carries, committee. Moving on, there's no communications. Moving on to staff reports. Acting Director of Finance, Caitlin Ripovs, a recommendation report T07 2024 Community Sponsorships and Cemetery and Hall Board Grants. Recommendation that report T07 2024 titled the 2024 Communication Sponsorships and Cemetery and Hall Boards Grant dated April 15, 2024 be received, and that the community sponsorships and cemetery and hall board grants for the 2024 as recommended in report T07 2024 titled 2024 Community Sponsorships and Cemeteries and Hall Boards Grant dated April 15th 2024 be approved. So I need a mover for that. Members of the committee, I got Councillor Riley, seconded by Madam Mayor, and questions. Councillor Riley, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too sure maybe who to address this to, maybe to our acting CAO. But first, thanks for the report. It's great to see this broken down this way. I know when I was going through the report on the weekend, the one thing that really caught my eye that I was kind of looking to better understand was the fact that our grant, our cemetery board grants requests was significantly lower than what was recommended. And so I was just looking for clarity. When I go through item by item here, for the most part, everyone got well above what they asked, except one group, for some reason, they got significantly lower. But overall, we were just about 2,000 more, and I realize that's probably primarily based on that's what we already have allocated in the budget. But if we're having less people request money, or we're giving out a smaller request, I would like to have seen that money maybe go to reserves and could be used for something else, and then wait for next year. If they ask for more next year, we have it there all ready to go. So through you maybe to our acting CAO, and then we can, or if it's not the right person, we'll go to the next person.
You can take that, Mr. CA?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Riley. Yeah, I could start, and then maybe Caitlin, our acting director of finance, could add to my answer. I don't know if council remembers or not, but back in September of 2023, council approved a report where we kind of re-looked at how grants were issued to cemetery boards, and basically we increased the annual cemetery grant allocation, basically a dollar value per acre of cemetery to be maintained. And that revised amount was more reflective of the current cost of operating and maintaining those cemeteries, in an effort to make sure that, you know, they're sustainable and we don't end up, you know, inheriting these cemeteries and funding them. So I don't know if Caitlin wants to add anything further to that.
Through you, Chair Trombetta, to Councillor Riley. Thank you, Acting CAO. Just to add on to that, so we did notice that same thing, Councillor Riley, and just to point out that the organizations tend to request the same amounts year over year, and that seems to be the case with the cemetery boards as well. As you can see in the report, the 2023 requests are the exact same as the 2024 requests, but because of how we allocate the funds for the cemetery halls, and we do it on an allocation basis where we look at how many acres are in that cemetery hall's possession. We allocate the funds based on that. It's as an objective form of allocating funds. So that's why there is a difference there. And this is the first year of allocating the funds with this new dollar amount per acre. So what our plan is to do once this report is approved at council next week, we plan to just let the cemetery halls cemetery boards know of this report, as we don't believe that they may have been made aware of the new funding allocation, so that going forward they know that that's what they can expect, unless it's approved by council in a future year in a different amount.
Okay, perfect. I guess
Thank
my follow-up question to you, Mr. Chair, maybe back to our Director of Finance. So I guess just in the sake of, in the name of transparency, do the cemetery boards themselves have to provide any details to how they manage the money that we're giving? And what does that look like? And is that something that has been given to council in the past? I don't know if I've missed that. I don't recall ever seeing it, but I would just love some clarity to that.
Through you, Chair Trombetta, to Councillor Riley. So the cemetery boards are still required to complete an application, which we do have on hand if council were interested in seeing anything. And with that application, they do have to submit financial records of the past year to show their revenues and expenses for the previous year and how they're spending the money. So we do have that information on hand if council wishes to see it.
Okay, so that's great to know, because when I look at the one request that they've asked for a couple of years, $2,800, the one year they got $1,000, this year they got a little bump up to $1,570. That is reflective to their financials that they've submitted. You guys taking that into consideration, compared it with whatever matrix you're using in terms of the acreage, and that's why they're not getting their requested mark, because it doesn't fall, it hasn't been merited. Is my understanding that correctly?
Overall, we are using the allocation of a dollar amount per acre. So that's the objective way of doing it, because our thought process on that is that, you know, the more acreage that is in control with the cemetery, that their cost would be reflective of that, because of the majority of the cost experienced by these cemetery halls is with repairs and maintenance of the land and upkeep. So that is how we've allocated the funds, is just based on per acreage.
That keeps it a little bit more fair and consistent,
Yes,
right?
correct,
Okay.
yes.
All right, perfect. I just, like I said, I just see this one particular request here. They've asked it for more than a couple of years, not sure how the rest of their funding goes, but I guess they'll be relieved to see a little bit of an increase there. But otherwise, that is the extent of my questions for this portion, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. I have the mayor, then I have Councillor Rayner, then Councillor Chichuk. Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to weigh in on that whole thing for a bit. more than 20 years ago, and for probably the 10 years prior to that, I actually was the person who submitted on behalf of St. Luke's Anglican Church and their cemetery. So I know that at that point in time, a good 20 years ago, I asked for $1,000. At that point, we would get maybe $750. So people have, it's generally speaking volunteers who are on those boards of those churches, especially the church-related cemeteries, and they are just looking to help cover the cost. And the costs obviously have gone up, their grass cutting costs, their straightening of stones and all of those maintenance kinds of things. So I actually was so pleased to read this report, to see that we had actually applied the per acre. It made it much more fair. For a period of time, if you see the Caisterville United Church, they are a much larger area, but as well, they had a great deal of stonework that needed to be done. And so about 10 years ago, I remember coming on even in 2016, but prior to that, 10 years, they asked for a lot of extra money that year because they were going to have to do a lot of stone repair, and that became their base. So there's been sort of an inequity for a long time in terms of whatever the base was that people were asking for, and they only ever got a percentage of that. So to have sort of relieved the situation and now made it fair in terms of how much land needs to be looked after, I think is something that is probably a long time overdue, and I'm really pleased to see that we're at that point now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilor Rayner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Caitlin, why are some of the requests, if they request, I believe St. Martin's requested small number, and the number that was granted was larger. Like, they only wanted 1,400, but we gave them 24. Why, that seems unusual. If somebody wants something, you're giving them more than they want, and others want something, and you're giving them less than they want. Shouldn't the most they get is what they asked for?
Through you, Chair Trombetta, to Councillor Rayner. As I noted, the requests that seem to come in are always, they tend to be based on whatever the historical requests are. They keep asking kind of for the same amount every single year. And we've always done like an allocation on an acreage basis. It's just this is the first year that it's been updated to reflect more current costs. So this is what staff recommended in the September Administration Committee meeting, was this new allocation amount per acre, and this is what we're applying. But if council wishes to make changes to that, they are able to.
Anything else, Councilor Rayner? Because she mentioned that during Councilor Riley's questions.
Yes, I understand. It just seems very unusual that if somebody wants something, give them more, which is generous. But I've had calls a number of times for Kimbo, and they always call and say, can I get more? We need some more work done. And it has increased from what they had asked, but it wasn't near the amount that they requested, and yet the ones who didn't request just what they needed, they ended up getting more. It just seems, I wish we could take it from the ones who weren't expecting to get extra and give it to the ones who have always been asking that never got any, or very little. So just to balance it out a bit. And especially if they come up and they request like they do, it just seems a shame all the time that they never meet the objectives that they want, and others seem to get more when they didn't really ask for it. But, thank you.
Thank you. Your microphone. Councilor Chichuk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. I note that the new allocation is $1,719 per acre compared to the $666 per acre that was there in the historical records. And I guess this is the first year under the new grant proposal, so the only thing I would ask is that in future years, as a balance accumulates, that we just get to see that, a new column on this, which would just be residual from last year. If somebody's getting $5,140, but they're only spending $2,000, then we may want to wonder. I think this is admirable that we've come up with this. Last year I thought the same. It's $15,500. We would never get that done if we had to do it. And having the churches take responsibility for the cemeteries and keep a standard, I think that's what we were trying to impose last year. So if we see that the cemetery, a specific one, is starting to look a little ragged. We know that we'd like them to use the money to get the grass cut more frequently, and that the standard was at what we expected. So I presume that we'll be watching for that, and that if they're not spending the money, or if it's gone and it is ragged, we would then, staff would be looking at it and saying, we gave you enough to take care of it, what the heck happened? So, out of respect for the people that find their last resting place in these cemeteries, I hope that people will be able to maintain them in a standard sufficient to bring a respectable level of service to them, to the cemeteries, that is. So, I guess we look at it for a few years, and then if there's a residual somewhere and we see the standard slipping, staff can come back and respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chichuk. Go ahead, Councillor Riley.
So, not to belabor this, I'm not going to speak to that item, but I do want to note too, as we go through the rest of the report here, you saw over the weekend, there was a significant decrease, even just with the community grants for the groups there as well. So it's not that, whether there's less requests. I know the Santa Claus Parade is no longer part of that, so that made up a good portion of that savings, about 13,000 or so. And so the difference here, we're talking about a couple $1,000s, just so those who are watching at home who might not have the report in front of them, it's certainly not life-changing money by any means, and for the service that they offer, that, that couple grand hopefully goes a long way, a difference, and, split up between all those organizations, but still, to echo my the fellow councilors around the horseshoe here, the cemetery, I appreciate the breakdown, I appreciate the explanation, I look forward to seeing where we go with this in the years to come. I would definitely like to see next year an understanding of if they come into a tremendous amount of surplus, if that's taken into the equation, so they're not just getting, I'll just, if they've asked for $1,000 and we give them $1,500, that they're not just getting it by default, that if they're coming out further ahead, maybe they don't need nearly as much, and that can go to another organization who might be just doing everything they can. And, they might be relying more heavily on volunteers to make up that difference, and you might be putting a burden on them accidentally.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. Councillor Bradrick?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you to the Deputy Treasurer, or I'm sorry, Acting Director. Just to draw a little bit of attention to the removal of the Santa Claus Parade dollars, and that has been put back into our, operating dollars with the other position that we were looking to hire. And that is the difference between the grant recommended in 2024 and that what we allocated in 2023. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair Trombetta, to Councillor Broderick, that is correct. Yes, the Santa Claus Parade funding was removed due to the changes that were made during the 2024 budget process. Yes,
okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradrick. Any other questions from committee? Okay, so the voting will be up in front of you. Councillor Chichuk, can you just get your microphone there, please? Thank you. And that carries. Thank you, members of committee. Moving on, item A15-24, Manager of Planning Garrett Borma and Acting Director of Finance Caitlin Rapaz. Recommendation Report T08-2024, Parks and Recreation Master Plan RFP Award and Budget Amendment. The recommendation that Report T08-2024 titled Parks and Recreation Master Plan RFP Awarded and Budget Amendment dated April 15, 2024 be received, and that the Budget Amendment BA 2024-1 in the amount of $30,000 funded through the Development Charges and Planning Reserve be approved, and that McQueen Galloway Associates be retained to complete the Parks and Recreation Master Plan as outlined in RFP 2024 PD 01. I need a mover for that, members of committee. Councillor Bradrick, seconded. Councillor Riley, any comments or questions? Seeing none, voting will be in front of you, members of committee. And that carries. Thank you, members of committee. Moving on to other business, item A16-24. Members of committee, any verbal updates from the boards that they sit on? Looking to my right, looking to my left. Oh, Madam Mayor.
I just want to point out that, Mr. Chair, that Saturday coming is the day that we're looking at doing cleanup. in the municipality. And on behalf of MIAC, I will invite those of you who wish to help us clean up the community center grounds to please come on out. And we have Nick Brunicioni, not Ken, but the cart coming too, and I'm buying hot dogs and hamburgers for those who come to help clean up the grounds on Saturday, as long as there aren't too many.
Excellent.
But extra help would certainly be great, but the kids are really keen to do it, and it's really good that I think that MIAC is involved in helping in the community in this way, so thank you.
Okay, excellent. Where? The community center. Yeah, Madam Mayor, the question from Councillor Chichuk was the actual location.
The community center grounds, 9:30 in the morning, we're
Okay.
starting.
Yeah.
Garbage bags and gloves will be supplied, and,
Weather permitting, or?
well, it looks like it's good. It was going to be weather permitting, and we were going to do the 20th or the 27th, but it looks like it will be okay.
Okay.
So we're planning to go ahead on
Yeah.
Saturday morning.
Okay, moving on, item A1724, members of council, any other business of an informative nature, looking to my right. See much shaking heads, looking to my left. Okay, any new business, members of committee? Seeing none. There's no confidential matters, and so I will adjourn this first portion of tonight's agenda at the hour of 7:16. Thanks, members.
Okay, welcome to the Township of West Lincoln Public Works and Recreation Committee agenda, meeting number 3 for Monday, April the 15th of 2024. Comments can be made from the public for a matter that is on the agenda by advising the chair during the request to address an item on the agenda section of the agenda. The public may submit written comments for matters that are on the agenda to nfiorentino@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting for consideration by the committee. Comments received after 4:30 p.m. on the day of the committee meeting will be considered at the following council meeting. Comments submitted are included in the record. This meeting will be live streamed as well as recorded and available on the township's website. The land acknowledgement statement. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattah-Wendoronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit from all across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the regional municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wide stewardship of the lands on which we live. Number 3 is members of committee. Are there any changes in the order of any items on the agenda at this time? Seeing none, disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest from any members of committee. Seeing none, appointments. There are no appointments at this time. Request to adjust items on the agenda. There is, I guess the only thing is to ask Kevin, are there anybody in cyberspace wishing to speak tonight?
Not seeing any, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Consent agenda items. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case the items will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. Item PW 11-24, consent agenda item, recommendation that the Public Works Recreation Committee be hereby approve the following consent agenda items. West Lincoln Public Library Board minutes of February 27th, 2024. I need a mover and a seconder for this. Madam Mayor and Councillor Broderick, any questions from members of committee regarding this? Seeing none, so I guess we can vote on this. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, communications. There is no communications. We're moving on then to staff reports. Item PW 12-24. Project Manager Ray Vachon and Director of Public Works and Recreation Mike DePaula. Re-recommendation report TW-13-2024. 2024 Rehabilitation Project Tender Award PW 2024-01 Budget Amendment BA 2024-02. Recommendation that the report PW-13-2024 Re-2024 Road Rehabilitation Project Tender Award PW 2024-01 Budget Amendment BA 2024-02 dated April the 15th, 2024 be received. And that the tender submission be awarded to Walker's Construction Limited for the road rehabilitation work in the amount of $795,767 excluding HST. And that the total project expenditure of $950,000 be approved for this project, and that Budget Amendment BA 2024-02 as outlined in Schedule C of Report PW-13-2024, reflecting a project budget reduction of $330,000 with reduced funding from development charges and the capital reserve be approved, and that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter in an agreement with Walker's Construction Limited be passed. I need a mover and a seconder for this, please. Councillor Chichok and Madam Mayor. At this point, I would ask the Director of Public Works if he could please maybe extrapolate a little bit on exactly what this done for members who are listening from the outside.
Sure, thank you very much, Chair Rayner. As part of the 2024 capital budget, there was 3 road projects that were included for the road rehabilitation program. Those 3 roads was Vaughan Road, the hard topping of Vaughan Road, converting it from gravel to surface treatment between Wellandport Road and Heathslip Road. Then the resurfacing of Concession 3 between Smithville and Smithville Road, which is Regional 14, and Caister-Gainsborough Town Line Road. And the third road that was included and approved in the 2024 budget was Abingdon Road, the resurfacing of that from North Chippewa Concession 2. The budget that was approved in 2024 was 1.28 million for those three road sections. Staff put out a tender. We received competitive pricing, and prices received from the low bidder was, as Councillor Rayner mentioned, in the $795,000 range. We applied a little bit of a project contingency to that low bid submission, because there's always schedule quantities change when the work gets done. And so the estimated total project cost will be approximately $950,000, which is $330,000 less than what was approved in the budget. So in consultation with our finance department, we are making the staff recommendation to put the $330,000 back, reduce the budget into the funding sources that was approved in the 2024 budget, which is a combination of development charges totaling $22,000 and another transfer back to capital reserve totaling $308,000. So that's basically a summary of this report.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Any members of the committee have questions with regards to this recommendation report? First swap, I believe, was the hands of Councillor Trombetta, and then Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, through you to Project Manager, Mr. Vachon. So Walker's Brothers got the resurfacing program again for this area. I know we had issues with the resurfacing program that they had last, and they changed the application on some of the roads, which I found was a better project, which was a sort of a reapplication of South Grimsby Road 18, which actually looks fantastic once the reapplication happened. Now, are they going to be using that product or still sticking with their existing product that, quite frankly, didn't do the job as well as South Grimsby Road 18, and we had a lot of issues on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Trombetta. Yeah, that application on South Grimsby 18 was kind of a test product. For this year's project, it's going to be regular surface treatment. With that said, I did look at the roads that they did do last year with just a regular surface treatment, and it appears to be holding a lot better than it did prior years. So we just have to keep on top of them.
So they're not using that same application?
They are not.
And so that this price doesn't reflect that same application? Is that price different? Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry. Or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, that product is a lot more expensive than surface treatment. It's between full asphalt and surface treatment, which is, the durability matches the price.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to add something?
Sure, I'd like to add to that, Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Councillor Trombetta, we specified what product we wanted, and we specified tar and chip surface treatment.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Broderick?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Acting CAO, Director Mike Paulo. Just really a comment about the savings of the $330,000 and the decision that was made to put back into the pot, I guess, so to speak. I think I just really appreciate that thoughtfulness from staff around, not looking for maybe another project to add on to with these challenging times that we certainly were faced with our 2024 budget and what we've been alerted by the Department of Finance that 2025 will look like. I think that money is going to be well appreciated to be back into those capital reserves. So a comment about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, do you have something?
Sure, I'd like to add to that, Chair Rayner. Yeah, and also keep in mind that there are some other larger projects that we have to tender, so this is kind of a safety net just to make sure we have those funds there in case those other tenders come in over budget.
Okay, thank you. I've only got one comment, and I certainly don't want to deviate from procedural bylaw, but with regards to the the capital reserve. I would like to discuss it further with staff regarding possible options and possibly bring it back to committee or council at a later date for a discussion, but tonight is not the opportune time for it. We have to stick to the agenda, not deviate from procedural bylaws. So I will probably get back to council or committee at a later date. So that's all I have.
I'll jump in. I'm not going to touch what you just said there. I'm going to probably say the opposite, and maybe echo Councilor Bradrick's comments as well. I certainly was relieved to see the savings. I guess my question to you, Mr. Chair, to our Director of Public Works there is, it seems like a substantial amount of savings. Like realistically, if they don't go into the contingency that you guys have allocated, there's almost near $500,000 in savings. And so I guess I'm just a little bit curious how we're so fortunate to see the potential of almost $500,000 in savings, which is definitely going to become, as we talk, look into the future, into the 2025 budget, we're going to be facing some challenges. So that $500,000 is definitely going to, or potentially $500,000 is definitely going to become a key factor at that. But if maybe the acting CEO could speak a little bit to, pardon me?
It's not $500,000.
No, I'm saying if they were
close to $500,000.
But no, well, that's not entirely true there. If you read
Closer to $250,000.
Well, you're talking about the 308 plus potentially almost 137,000 if they don't go into the contingency. So I'm just saying, in an ideal situation, there could be near $500,000 of savings if the numbers they gave us end up actually being true. And that being the case, why is it so low? Like, to me, I understand sometimes we have it and maybe it's $100,000 or less. This seems like a substantial amount of savings. So if maybe we can get a clarity of why that is. I just don't want to be facing this situation that we're seeing now with Station 2 at the fire hall there, where, it's gone on for so many years. It's like quadrupled, if not, quadrupled in what we originally thought it was going to be. And I hate to see, have to come back and find out it is an actual savings. It just looks that way right now. So, anyways.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilor Riley. That's a great question. I like the way you're thinking. It's very, it's just what staff does. We try to put the budget together with the best information we have at the time, based on trends and other things, just project scope. A lot of times when we tender a project, there's a number of factors: market condition, prices. Price of oil at the time of tendering a project. Also, it's just, how busy are the contractors? How busy are they to secure work for their forces? Sometimes the timing of the tender is another big thing where you could get 20-25% savings. So we strategically, we put a budget together with the best knowledge that we have based on past projects, and then we strategically try to. And then when you dive down into getting the tender ready, then you kind of narrow down on the actual project scope. So sometimes that contributes to it as well. And then we strategically try to tender these jobs in a certain time of year, which also helps with, for lack of a better term, the contractors really sharpening their pencil to secure work. So it's a combination of factors. It's a combination of factors.
Perfect, and thank you, and I appreciate that, and hopefully those numbers remain true, and we see that savings, because I know next budget's going to be probably tougher one than we've seen so far, so much appreciated. Thank you.
Any further questions from anybody in the committee? Seeing none, it's time to vote. Okay, that carries forward. PW 13-24, Manager of Operations, Trey Benish, and Director of Public Works and Recreation, Mike DiPaula. Recommendation report PW-12-2024-2024-2026, dust control authorization. Recommendation that report PW-12-2024 titled 2024 to 2026 dust control tender authorization dated April 15, 2024 be received, and that the tender PW 2024-03 for the application of calcium chloride for the purpose of dust control on gravel roads for 2024 to 2026 be awarded to Daily Dust Control, and that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter an agreement with Daily Dust Control. I need a mover and a seconder for this, please. Councilor Trombetta and Madam Mayor, any questions from members of committee regarding this subject? Councilor Trombetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Project Manager Mr. Vachon. I know that now that we're getting a lot of the rain, and obviously I've been getting a few phone calls of, I know this is obviously dust control, but, dust control leads to obviously grading, and then afterwards, the grading comes to dust control afterwards to control it. So what's the timelines for all this stuff? I guess we have to wait for the April showers to finish and then go out, and that's usually in the later when it gets warmer. But what are all the timelines for grading of these roads and then actually applying the dust control?
Yes.
I believe the director will direct that.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I'm not familiar with the project itself, so I have to refer to the chair there.
Could you answer that, please?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Trombetta. Yeah, this is our operations staff, Councillor Trombetta, that put out this tender, so I'll speak to that. Actually, as far as grading gravel roads go, they've been doing it all year, even in the wintertime, because of the freeze-thaw cycle. So it's a continuous operation, unfortunately, this year because of the freeze-thaw. So they're continuously going out there to grade roads on a as-needed basis. And as far as the dust control tender goes, it's once again, we receive prices based on different loads, a larger load for these long stretch roads, rural roads, and we also have a unit price for a smaller load, a truck load, to deal with the smaller roads that are dead end roads. But anyways, the dust control is basically on an as needed basis when dust is an issue. Something that I'd like to notify this committee of is it is a joint tender with Wainfleet, so it's another strategy that we use to get some competitive pricing and doing some joint tenders with our neighboring municipalities. I think I addressed all your questions there.
That's great, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, vote time. And that is carried. Excuse me. Item PW 14-24, Coordination and Recreation Services, Wendy Beatty, and Director of Public Works and Recreation, Mike DiPaula. Recommendation report, REC-01-2024, Music, Market, and Parket Update. A recommendation that report REC-01-2024, titled Music, Market, and Parket Update, dated April the 15th, 2024, we received for information. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Riley and Councillor Bradrick. Any questions from members of committee regarding this? Councillor Bradrick.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, to the acting CIO, I'm assuming. Just a quick question about the poll on the days of the week. Was there any attempt at looking at a point system to help determine what the best day is rather than just having what people's first picks were? So like a point system that would have awarded points for second picks? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Through the chair to Councillor Bradrick, the way we set up the poll for that particular question, we asked all the vendors that submitted the survey to make a selection on what their first choice would be. And then we also asked them to, what's your second choice, what's your third choice, what's your fourth choice, and what's your fifth choice. And we did acquire all that data. And this report that we're presenting to committee, we did assign a point system. It's hard to kind of describe to you how we did the matrix to come up with the point system, but at the end of the day, we're only presenting to you what the first choice was from all the vendors that submitted the survey, and overwhelmingly, not overwhelmingly, but 38% of the vendors wanted to stick with the Tuesday like previous years, so that's what we presented today. If we kind of showed you the point system, it would have been I guess any day of the week would have worked, right? But we wanted to show what the majority of the first choice was. So 38% of the vendors wanted to keep it on Tuesday. That's our rationale behind that.
Okay, I was just thinking if, most other people picked, say Fridays as their second choice, then that might have been also something valuable to know. So I'm not sure if the results would have swayed any other day of the week. to be a better choice or not, because we don't have that data in front of us. But that's all my questions.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Chichuk?
Thank you for the work that was put into this, this information. But we grow late in the day for being on top of a market. And I would like to know that we are going to come up with results of whatever this year holds a lot sooner so that we can move forward or not with the market in the future. We've given it yeoman's efforts. We've spent money to bring entertainment. Maybe we need to cut back on that. Maybe we need to have canned music. I don't know what we need, but we've certainly tried very hard, and we don't know seemingly what the public seems to want. And the vendors that we did poll, we don't know whether they're West Lincoln vendors, and we don't know whether they're all produce vendors. So one of the things that we noticed last year in the market was that there were a lot of transient vendors who go to festivals in Muskoka, was a big one, and various other places, trendy places, and those happen on weekends, which say, I'd rather be there making $20 for every one of my whatevers than being here in West Lincoln. So there are some things that are skewed in the information that we have, that, building on what Councillor Bradrick is saying, we need to give great consideration to, first, our West Lincoln farmers or Niagara, which is what we said at the outside of this market and market exercise. And then we need to look at, as Councillor Bradrick says, the skewing that could happen, because we really do want to have produce vendors there. We aren't looking for a flea market. We aren't looking for something that is outside the normal basic market in West Lincoln. And I would ask that we could have a report back. I guess we have nothing to do but to do this now because it's April. So we will not achieve getting vendors to come to our market if we start changing things at this point. We got to get on with it. So at the end of this year, I really do want a lot of results brought to us in their raw form, so that the analysis isn't precluding what Friday might have brought or Sunday might have brought. I don't care, but I'd really like to see the raw form so that we can make collective decisions, and so that we aren't going to be pouring money into something that might have been better if we did it a different way. Thank you.
Mr. Director?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Chichuk. Yeah, those are great ideas, and I think based on what we're going to do this year, most of the events that we're having will take place in July and August. So I'd like to talk to staff and really at the end of the last event in August, collect some data, and I do think it's a good idea that we report back to this council, and that kind of aligns with our budget process and what we're planning on doing next year. So I think it's a good idea to, once August comes and all these events are done, that we bring something forward to council in September. Let's see what kind of information we have, what kind of data we have, and maybe even have a discussion with council what next year's events would look like, and that will kind of feed into our 2025 budget preparation of what this event would look like in the future.
Councillor Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you back to our acting CEO. So, again, I thank you for all the work the staff's done to get this off the ground here and adapt and pivot from what we originally had and trying to make this event successful. I'm an analytics guy. I like looking at the finer details, so I certainly would appreciate anything that you, in the future, that you'd have to include, just so we can better understand the recommendation or the reasons why we got to where we were. But I'm going to poke on question 1, for example, and that's not so much the question, but it's in reference to the result of current vendors versus new vendors. And if I'm not mistaken, in the report mentioned that you guys had reached out, you sent about 60 emails, I believe, as well as advertised on social media. So the problem that we have here, at least the problem I see, and it could just be myself here and the way how I'm looking at it, is it's almost a 50-50 draw. So we're at 54% current vendors who weighed in on this versus 46. And the thing is, we don't know if the 46 are necessarily going to show up. And so there's a risk factor there. So it's, in the moment, it sounds great, you know, they're getting this out in March, and everything sounds great, and then another event comes up, you know, whether it's more lucrative for them or something that's more catered to or tailored to their, what they're selling or what they're promoting. And so again, so now when we take their number, and I don't know where all these, maybe they aren't the ones that voted for Tuesday and they're split evenly, but without that information, we don't really have a clear understanding of what this event's going to look like, even from the vendor side of it, because there's just so many new vendors that have expressed interest but not commitment. And that's the biggest concern I have as far as making sure that this event is successful. You know, I know myself, when I look at what my weeks are going to look like, you know, between dance, baseball, all the other extracurriculars my kids are on. Tuesdays are tough for me, but then that's not me speaking to this as a vendor, but me speaking to it as a resident, as somebody who would actually go and love to fund and support this and trying to find a way to balance that. And so I guess through you, Mr. Chair, to our acting CAO, is it too late to maybe park this conversation, for a matter of speaking, till next month, and just wait for you to give us a better insight of what that looks like? Because I just want to make sure that, you know, and if you're saying we should go through with this year, I'll gamble on that. I just like to make sure that we are making sure that we've done everything we can to ensure that this is going to be successful. And I'm just really concerned. Even when we look at the split here, for those who can't see at home, we have 3 firsts, 9 firsts, 5 firsts, 5 firsts, and 2 firsts for the days of the week. You know, they're still relatively close. That these aren't definitive numbers, in my opinion, and to some extent, it doesn't even look like everyone necessarily picked a first here. But still, I just want to, or picked any. So I just want to make sure, you know, if there's an opportunity to look at this a little bit further, we're not passing on that. But if it's a time-sensitive thing that we need to make a decision today, then so be it.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Riley. I do feel it is a time-sensitive thing. We're kind of behind the 8 ball here. We just kind of hired a person for that not temporary, but part-time event planner. So we're going to get that staff member on board next week. The idea, after this report gets approved, we do want to have a follow-up meeting with all these vendors that showed interest to kind of explain the process to them on how to apply to be a vendor. And let's keep in mind, it's not just a market, it's basically 3 events combined into one. So you know, there's musicians involved for the music aspect of it. There's car clubs that are involved as well with the park it aspect or the car show aspect of this event. So I think it is time sensitive. Let's start planning for it, and you know, let's see how the first couple events go. And you know, we could reassess with staff mid-July or end of July and see if we need to make a change. And if we do need to make a change, then we'll come back to this council and make sure you guys are aware of what changes we're making.
Perfect, and just to, I appreciate that, and I think if there's an opportunity to pivot because we're seeing that there's not as many numbers or, you know, commitment from vendors, I would welcome that. So to hear that, I'm fine with going forward with that today. I just want to make sure that we aren't committed to something, and if it's a complete flop, I want to make sure that we're still making the most of what we have here.
All right, through to Councilor Trombetta and then Madam Mayor.
Through
Councilor
Trombetta?
Sure, why not?
Sure, why not? Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said through Councilor Trombetta. I wasn't.
Sorry, to Councilor Trombetta.
Thank you, that's better. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, through you to the acting CAO, maybe I'm missing it in the report, but I know I've suggested in the past that Saturday mornings would be ideal, but I don't see it in the report, even a voting tally. Was Saturday not an option?
Through the chair to Councillor Trombetta, unfortunately, Saturday was not an option. We talked about it with staff, and just operationally, for this year, unfortunately, it just operationally didn't work for us.
For staff.
For staff.
And I get that. Then thank you for answering that, Mr. CAO. I was just wondering can we get the vendors to vote? I see how we have Monday to Friday, but if the vendors gave us 39% on a Saturday, maybe that's something that council needs to look at in the future to get it for Saturday mornings, so.
Again, through the chair to Councillor Trombetta, I hear what you're saying, but again, it's really 3 events in one, so staff did reach out to different car clubs, and you know, Saturday morning, the feedback we got from the different car clubs for the car show aspect of it was Saturday doesn't work for them. even the music aspect of it. A lot of the musicians that would be applying to perform, just based on staff's experience dealing with these musicians, Saturday morning doesn't work for them as well.
Yeah.
So for those reasons and our operational ability to deliver on Saturday, for those reasons, for this survey, we didn't include Saturday.
Okay.
But we could relook at it in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, leaving this alone, but going back to something that you said, Director, I just want to talk about how late we are this year. And part of that lateness is one of my worries that popped into my head when you started to talk about, well, look at this as a budget consideration. We won't do our budget again until probably the same time of year next year. And so if we don't have a full plan in place, we'll be in exactly the same place this time next year. People in January start reaching out to the bigger markets and committing to being there on a given day. And so I'm very concerned that we can't sort of sit back and say, okay, we'll see how this goes, and then we'll make a decision, after budget next year. So I think, yes, we need to evaluate it. Yes, we need to look at what the turnout is like for each of those three events separately or collectively. And we also have to make some decisions and commit to those. Yes, we're going to do this because we will need to be on board starting in January, rounding up people if we want to do a thorough market next year. And the same thing is true of musicians, and the same thing may be true of car clubs. It may very well be that staff reaching out at this time of year, car clubs may already be committed elsewhere on a Saturday or on a different night of the week. So I think the key is going to be, we've made a decision now, we've changed our format. Now we have to be ready to move forward on the 25 season in a more timely manner than what we're doing right now. Thank you.
Councillor Chichar.
We're kind of we're at the 11th hour, and that's what I said when I left, what I was saying the first time around. But I do want to mention the fact that we wanted to have a market. No one talked about a car club or music in the park. Music in the park used to be a separate event, and we've never had cars. So if this is going, I'd like to have a full analysis of the cost, because there are a number of people who've said that they would be happy to participate in the process of getting the market up and working. And I didn't want to look like I was negative about this, but I think we're losing sight of the fact that we wanted to have a farmer's market. And the farmer's market was farmers, not people who make coasters, or not people that make wooden charcuterie trays, or not people that do others, but they were welcomed. But I listened to what it is that my colleagues are saying about the various analysis that we should have, and this is not something that can wait until after the market's done. I think we need to look at this very carefully. I'm not sure that we have the ability to spend any more time musing about the issue. I don't want to look at this critically, but I do know that a lot of people who are vendors, who were produce vendors, are now committed to other markets. And so whatever we say, there's not going to be an abundance of people like we had the first year. So if we're spending money for the car people, and if we're spending money for the music in the park, I hope we're not compromising those two events because we're now marrying them to a market and forgetting the fact that the market is what we really wanted to have, and we need to identify whether or not that is something that will continue. But now we've mixed it all up. So Music in the Park is always a successful event, has been for a number of years. It happens at night, and a lot of people enjoy it. I don't know what the cars are going to do, but the market did do very well the first year. It lost its momentum, and I am very concerned. I am very concerned that we aren't looking at Saturday. I'm very concerned that we didn't do the analysis at an amalgam of what option 2 would have been if it had been Thursday morning or Thursday night. And I think we need to start looking at that as soon. I mean, we could turn this down and we wouldn't have a market. we could turn this down and you'd have music and cars. I don't know. But I think if we're going to give anybody a chance, I don't want to lose sight of the fact we wanted to have a market with produce and farmers, not with a bunch of other things that have crowded in. And those people go to events on Saturdays, so they don't want to have a market on Friday, Saturday, because they're gone. So I just want to make sure that our analysis, as soon as possible as this market is done, because you're ending it in August, is not, one, costly, and two, we have a full array of analysis that are going to make it so that we understand, and more or less, and more so that staff understand. And if we're doing a fool's odyssey here, then we need to make a decision on whether or not we actually are ready for a market. We postpone it for a year. But I pray that we are not throwing good money after bad and/or misleading all of the people about this 3 event now with no change to the fact we've gone to the basics of we wanted a market. So I'll stop there, but listening to my colleagues, I'm worried that we may not be happy with what's there, so I hope that your analysis starts with the first opportunity.
Before I go to Councillor Trombetta, anybody on this side like to go? No? All right, Councillor Trombetta, you may go.
I thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me a second time. I appreciate that. My colleagues to the left here both brought up some points, and, Councillor Riley mentioned, the Tuesday night with the market, with the families rushing home and getting the kids to dance and all that kind of stuff. I totally understand that. And then Councillor Chichuk brought up about, morning times. Like, can the market coincide with, I know other markets, and I've seen it in other municipalities where they have it starting in the morning, and then maybe later on move into, especially in the summertime when people are home or their schedules are more flexible, usually in the morning time during the July and August months, that, the night times become relatively more busier for people to going to places, and like I said, for those families. But you realize that sometimes the morning where the kids are at home and, a lot of people are at home in that daytime, they can go get their sort of fresh produce in the daytime. And I know other municipalities do that in the morning and then maybe transition. Has that been an option at all through you, Mr. Chair, to acting CAO, Mr. DePaula?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Trombetta.
Like early start, maybe?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. The thought process behind the way we're delivering this event, again, we kind of had to pivot at the 11th hour to deliver this event, because originally we were planning to
Cancel.
have the necessary staffing resources to deliver a market as we did last year, about 22 events. And then we decided to do this. And one of the key things to try to make the market successful was through staff's research, we determined that a lot of times, to make markets successful, it does help to couple the market with another event. So that's kind of the thought process here. So I hear what committee and council are saying. I think let's just continue planning with how we're planning, and we'll continuously assess after each event. We'll sit down with staff and the vendors and, see what works, see what doesn't work, and if there's an opportunity to, implement a week where we could have an early market in the morning, and then it spills over to music in the park. Well, we could try and do that, but it's hard for me to commit to that right now. But I hear what everyone's saying, and we will do our best to continuously improve this new event to make sure it's successful.
Yeah, and that's why I'm through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Director. I just know that, I'm sorry, Mr. Acting Director / Acting CAO, you know what I'm saying, Councillor? I just know that a lot of markets do start early in the morning at 10 o'clock, and maybe, these markets can start at, instead of 3 o'clock as a projected time slot, which I'm imagining is what it was in the past, if they start at 11 o'clock, they can work and keep going if they choose to, if they're a vendor, and then, the classic car rolls in, and then music in the park to finish off at the end of the evening. I think that'd be a great event. But relatively, markets do start in the morning. All over the world, I've spent time in Europe where they're Wednesdays and Saturdays, but they do start in the morning and not at in the afternoon. So hopefully maybe that's an idea to float to the vendors, especially in the summer months where I think a lot of families, will go there in the morning and, maybe around 11 o'clock and then, stay the whole day, make it a duration and come back maybe later at night for music in the park because they know music and they picked up their groceries. Oh, music's in the park this evening. Let's go back. And, just a thought, that's all, Mr. Chair. That can be possible. Maybe I have a discussion with the vendors but it's entirely up to them. If they want to start at 3, they can start at 3. But if they want to start earlier, they can start earlier.
Any further? I believe our clerk, Madam Clerk, you have a motion you believe we could put forward regarding this discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From what I'm hearing, I'm gathering, and please correct me if I've misunderstood, that I've put together a motion that reads that staff be directed to report back to a Public Works Committee meeting at the conclusion of the 2024 Music Market and Parket event to provide for an assessment of the event, including a full assessment of the cost to assist in planning future events.
Does that sound appealing to members of committee? I need a mover then and a seconder to put that. Councillor Bradrick and Councillor Riley. Any further discussions with regards to the motion presented by the clerk? We got a vote on, and then we got a vote as amended. So we have 2 votes, correct? How would you wish to do it, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chairman, it would just be one motion because the initial motion was just to receive for information. So this would make it a recommendation for action.
Okay, so we can vote right now on your
Right.
motion. All right, so that's what we'll see right now then. Okay, thank you. And that passes. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for summarizing all that discussion and putting it down so eloquently. Item PW 15-24, Manager of Parks, Recreation and Facilities, Robert Dennison, and Director of Public Works and Recreation, Mike DePaula. Recommendation report, RFP-PW 2024-03, Cemetery Maintenance Contract Request for Proposal Award. Recommendation that report REC 03-2024 titled RFP-PW 2024-03 Cemetery Maintenance Contract Request for Proposal Award dated April the 15th, 2024 be received. And that the submission received from Kelly Diggs Landscaping for a 5-year term, 2024 to 2028, in the amount of $123,139.25 Canadian, excluding HST, be approved. And that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter an agreement with Kelly Diggs Landscaping be passed. I need a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Chichak and Madam Mayor, any questions with regards to this recommendation? Councillor Broderick.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair, to the acting CAO. I had a question in regards to the education that is required or experience of a contractor when working in cemeteries. I know that staff have to have some special type of training, and wondering if contractors do as well.
Mr. Director, could you answer that question?
Through the chair to Councillor Bradrick, I believe for this type of activity, that training isn't required, but it is a nice to have, and it is a nice to have. So we did include that as part of our analysis, as part of the technical score when we reviewed the proposals, and we scored them accordingly. But it's not a requirement for lawn, for grass cutting that they have to be trained. We were just curious to see if the contractors had that training.
And do you recall if the successful candidate has the education?
Through the chair to Councillor Bradrick, I believe they did. I believe they did because, yes, I'm pretty confident that they did now. Because another thing that we did check with this recommended vendor was we checked references, and they do cemetery maintenance in another municipality in Niagara region. So we did check with that municipality, and the references checked out to be really good. So we're very comfortable in proceeding this way.
And through you, Chair, I just know that losing George Lane was the contractor previously,
Correct.
right, if I'm not mistaken. I always had heard so many positive things, and I just, hate to see that level of service decline, so I'm glad to hear that they have that experience. That's all.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Chichak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the appropriate staff. How about that? I'm glad to see this, and I guess the point I was trying to get to earlier was the fact that we need to establish a standard that is worked to, no matter which cemetery. I know these aren't the church cemeteries, but we expect to see, if we're giving you more money these days, that there'll be a certain level of performance that we should be able to see in the cemeteries. And if that means you spend it all, you spend it all. But in doing this and seeing that these virtually take care of the grass cutting and maintenance out in the cemetery, I wondered if there was a way that we could have gotten a price or could get a price so that we could extend it to the church cemeteries, if this is a better price than what they're paying for lawn cutting and maintenance or whatever they do.
Through the chair to Councillor Chichak, I think that's a great suggestion. I think the best way to probably approach that is now that, if we do proceed and retain this vendor, perhaps staff could reach out to different private cemeteries and educate them and advise them of the RFP that the township has put out, and then we could connect the cemetery with our low vendor, and if they want to work out a deal, they can. But I think that's a great suggestion. I think I'll make sure staff reaches out to the private cemeteries so they're aware of what process we did and who we're retaining, and perhaps there are economy to scales to have these these other private cemeteries retain the same type of contractor, but I would recommend that they do it on their own.
If that be the way, I just wanted to know that we had some way of extending the tender prices to all cemeteries in the township, if that's what they wanted to do. To Councillor Bradrick's point about someone, Mr. Lane, retiring, that's the problem that most cemeteries are facing, is that their caretakers are probably doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And if that isn't there, what's the alternative? So if some of these services that we're looking at could say, yes, and if we wanted to go there, what would your price be? So we know that we're not making, it's a private deal. You pick it up if you want it, but it's still $10 a meter or something. But have the price extend to our privately run or operated cemeteries as well as our own.
May I please? Since this is a new firm that's going to be doing this, will there be our people out there to check to make sure that it's to the standards that Mr. Lane has always kept the cemeteries at?
Through the chair, yeah, we'll make sure that staff follows up with the performance of this vendor on a regular basis.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, it's time to vote then, if there's no further questions from committee. Okay, that moves on. Item PW 16-24, Coordinator of Recreation Services, Wendy Beatty, and Director of Public Works and Recreation, Mike DePaula. Recommendation Report REC-02-2024, MERS and the Recreation Services 2023 Review. Recommendation Report REC-02-2024, titled MERS and Recreation Services 2023 Review, dated April 15, 2024, be received for information. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bradrick and Councillor Riley. Any questions or concerns regarding this? Councillor Bradrick.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair, to the appropriate staff member. I think, firstly, an appreciation of this report. It certainly is a encompassing overview of everything that's going on in our community, and it's very helpful for not only just council, but the residents as well, to see exactly what is happening with within our recreation department. So definitely appreciate that fulsomeness of the report. I had just a couple of questions. One was about the numbers of campers on is that per day? I think it was page 52. Not the number of campers, but the times the amount of days per week, because we don't have over 200 campers per day, do we?
Through the chair to Councillor Bradrick, yeah, that is per week.
Per week.
So the same child would be counted 5 times on a 5-day week? Is that correct?
I believe so.
Makes sense.
Maybe I should look into that further, but I believe so, yes.
Okay, I just assumed, and I didn't think the camp was that large. Also, I guess, I don't think I have another, I can't read my own writing. I guess another comment is the part of the report that you had about the community connections. That was great to be able to read, because certainly it really highlighted who else in our community that we're receiving programs from, and also who is sponsoring some of those programs that we are providing. So that was a great part of the report. If I can read my writing, I will ask the chair to ask more questions later on. Thank you.
Any further questions from any other members of the committee? No? Seeing none at this time, then I guess we vote. Sorry. Oh, hang on, you got a chance to figure it out. Councillor Chichak.
Yes, with the demand for pickleball going up, one of the questions I was asked is, what are we doing with the ice surface that is not ice anymore after it gets taken out? A number of other municipalities are putting pickleball courts on the ice surfaces. And so other than the fact that we might be closed for preventative maintenance or maintenance for the ice surface, I've been led to understand that there's not really any damage that can occur on that surface. Could we use it for a pickleball, more pickleball courts, given that ours are full all the time and they go till God knows what hour of the night?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Chichak, let me take that away and let me discuss that with staff. I just need to review like the surface and the traction of the surface, if it's something that would be
safe,
appropriate and safe. So let me look into that.
Yeah, I apologize that I just remembered about that, but that would be great. And if there was additional equipment that would be required, I'm sure that in the rental fees, we'd probably recoup that.
No? Darn, Madam Mayor. Okay.
So I just have a quick one that actually came to mind. I brought this up when my act first started. One of the questions that those young people asked the very first few meetings we had was about when the ice is out, about playing ball hockey. So I guess if we're looking at ongoing and whatever we're going to do with that space, rather than it sit empty, I know that when they asked at the time, the answer was that the day camp was actually using that space at some time. So that may still be true, but if there's some time, if it doesn't turn into pickleball courts and there's some time when the daycare is not using, or the day camp is not using that, if there is a way to provide that opportunity, I know that they have something for younger kids going on right now, but these kids that are asking me are grade 7, 8, 9. And they'd like to just, they're getting in trouble if they're playing on the streets. They'd like a place to play, and what they came up with was the ask about the when the ice is out of the rink. So.
Okay, very good. Any further? Seeing none, voting time. Okay, very good. Other business, PW 17-24, members of council. Is there any other business items of a informative nature you wish to discuss at this time? Seeing none, new business, only for items that require immediate attention or direction. I must first approve a motion to introduce a new item of business. Seeing none, we have no confidential, and therefore I adjourn this meeting at 8:16 p.m. Thank you very much and have a nice